While at the ICA, we do not take any one political position given our educational status, we believe that art makes life meaningful and connects people and communities. As part of our commitment to serving San Jose and the greater Bay Area region, providing free, safe, and welcoming space for all, we hope that you all enjoy tonight's free online program. We're proud to support artists as visual and valued thinkers, storytellers, and creators, and happy that tonight's artists have made it their practice to be activist artists as an essential element of what they do, aligned with the age-old commitment artists have had to society as a whole. Part of the inspiration for this program came out of the fact that we will also, on September 14th, be opening the Future Democracies Laboratory, created by Jonathan Keats and Steve Dury of San Jose State University. And indeed, we're going to be exploring the need to be engaged in a civic basis during what may be one of the most important historical elections that we've seen in this country. Also on September 14th, we'll be launching the next Facade Project with Oscar Lopez. Tonight's conversation, talking about art and activism, the practice of activism in art, goes well back, certainly in the Western tradition, to the papal commissions of the Renaissance, through more recently to Courbet and Daumier, the creation of Dada in response to World War I, the works of Hertfeld and Hannah Höch with the rise of Nazism in Germany in the late 1920s and 30s, the Situationists, the work coming out of Women's House around Otis Art School in LA in the 1970s and 80s. And with that, it's my great pleasure to be able to introduce Michele, Lena, and John. Michelle's going to go first, followed by Lena and John. Michele Pred is a Swedish-American conceptual artist whose practice includes sculpture, assemblage, and performance. Her work uncovers the cultural and political meanings behind everyday objects. Examples include her exploration of the intersection of personal space and security by using airport confiscated items after 9/11, which may be one of the first ways many of us started to hear about her work. And it looks like Michele has one of those pieces over her shoulder with the lighters making up the American flag. Since 2016, she's organized 13 feminist art parades. I've been lucky enough to witness some of those. She did one when we were all together at the art fairs in Florida 2 years ago. And indeed, she is presently represented by Nancy Hoffman Gallery, and her work are in the permanent collection of Berkeley Art Museum, FIT, Contemporary Museum of Honolulu, the 9/11 Memorial, and a list really that goes on quite a bit and extremely significantly. And I think, as a lot of people also know, she has also got a lot of traction in the press with pieces in the New York Times, Art Newspaper, Art News, ArtNet, and more. She received her BFA from CCA in Oakland, and we're almost kind of neighbors. Michele, thank you so very, very much for being here. I'm also going to do some of the other introductions so that for the rest of this evening, the night is indeed, to the best of my ability, yours. Lena Wolf, an artist, craftswoman, and activist for civil engagement who's been based in the San Francisco Bay Area since the early 1990s. Her work extends out of American folk art traditions while at the same time being rooted in minimalism, geometric abstraction, op art, social practice, feminist, and political art. Lena's broad interconnected artistic output includes drawing, collage, sculpture, text-based works, frequent collaborations, and public projects. In 2017, she formed Art for Democracy, beginning with this effort that was certainly all over my neighborhood with an anti-hate poster that really made its way, I think, all over the greater Bay Area, followed by a widespread national public art campaign to boost voter participation. And over the last 2 decades, her work has been presented in galleries and museums across the country, including by the National Lesbian and Gay Archives, the Berkeley Art Museum, SF MoMA, Oakland Museum, and on. She lives with her wife, artist, teacher, and illustrator Miriam Klein-Stahl, and their daughter in Berkeley, California. It's important, following up after this, that we will be providing ways to be in touch with both artists as well as Professor Ifcher. They're both very much sort of public living artists with active information moving through their Instagram feed and otherwise, and we'll make sure to share that after the presentation. And Professor Ifcher, thank you so very, very much for joining us as an economics professor who teaches economics of the public sector with a focus on poverty and income inequality, and whose research follows behavioral economics. In 2018, Ifcher founded Flip the House, an all-volunteer group that raised over $700,000 to help Democrats take control of the House, and what has now evolved into, can we see the t-shirt, John? Flip the Vote. John is currently the chair of Flip the Vote and its advisory board. We're thrilled and honored to be here. My colleague Haley Kerrigan is with us as well, helping to manage the chat and feedback. I think I was due to finish by 6:10, so I'm pretty much right there on the mark. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Michele. What we had talked about a little bit just right before you came on was that it might be just as easy if you want to do share screen in terms of presenting yours, or Haley can do it for you. Let us know which you prefer.
I'll just go ahead and say next when I, yeah, just make it easier. Thank you, James, for that introduction, and thanks to everyone for being here. That doesn't look like the most recent version I sent. I sent another slideshow earlier today. If you could maybe start with that instead. But in the meantime, I'll I sent that about 5 hours ago. But in the meantime, I can at least start talking a little bit about myself. I grew up in Berkeley, California, to a feminist activist family. My father was a professor at Berkeley for over 40 years, and I really grew up with activism in my blood, in my DNA, I suppose. I was going to protests as I was taken along to protests in my first years of life, during the anti-war demonstrations in Berkeley, the freedom of speech. There was so much happening in Berkeley at the time. And also at the dinner table, when growing up, we always had political discussions. So it really is in my blood. And I also wanted to say, just sort of as an addition to the lovely introduction from James, that I'm not only an activist and feminist and artist, but a mom and an educator. I've taught at CCA for 8 years. And as James mentioned, I've now been 20 years with Nancy Hoffman Gallery in New York. And that, and actually, back to my growing up in Berkeley, went to school with Kamala in the 3rd grade, though I don't remember. So what's really important to me is public art. I've had many solo shows, but I think just as important to showing artwork within 4 walls is showing artwork, or displaying art through public means, of which I've done 10 billboard shows across the country, and 2 of those were group shows, actually more than that because I've done them with 4 Freedoms, and 2 of those I've done with Lena, and the biggest one was just 2 years ago. That show was called Vote for Abortion Rights, and we had 10 artists in 12 states, and I don't remember how many cities. It was 14, and that was really thanks a lot to Lena's involvement in getting even more billboards spread about, and she had her wonderful billboards all over the place. And most recently, and I'll show you that coming up here as soon as we get the slides going, and just to say to Haley and James, if we can't get the slides going, then I can talk a little bit more, and then we can use the older slideshow if that doesn't work out. So I don't have James's phone number. Well, I will continue. So with my parades, I've done 15 so far. The bio James read from, I think I had the wrong information there, so it's 15. They generate a lot of hope. They're also extremely public in the sense that, there it is, thank you, that they're seen by a lot of people. They're a lot of fun. I didn't realize that. That's fine. Thank you. That parades could be so energetic. It creates community. I used to always think of activism and protesting as something that was also very, very passionate, but always or often sort of with anger. And I've decided to take the positive approach, pro, abortion rights, pro feminism, and that's really been my take in highlighting the positive and what we need to create moving forward. So as James mentioned, this is one of my pieces from the 9/11 work I did that started in 2002. These are airport confiscated items, and I ended up working on this body of work for 10 years. Much longer than I expected to, and it's in many collections. And next, Haley. And this is a piece just to show sort of a variety of the kind of work I do, that this is about gun control, and I've done a lot of artwork with bullets, because it's unfortunate reality how accessible and easy it is to get guns in our country, and I'm extremely anti-gun. This piece actually is in the Hall Foundation collection, which is a private museum on Alameda of all places. So if anyone wants to find out how to make an appointment to see the current show, which is a great show with lots of local artists, I'm happy to give you that information. So next. So I'm going to start talking a little bit about my parades and actions. So basically, this is my first one, and it just was sort of a come together, let's do this. It was on the, I don't remember now, the 22nd anniversary of Roe v. Wade, I think. And it was when we knew that Trump was running. So this is in January. There was 15 candidates at that point, and I wanted to send a strong statement. So I made T-shirts for all the candidates that said her body, her vote on it. Excuse me, her body, her business. And I invited some friends, and I just said, wear pink and black, and let's march for the Planned Parenthood in downtown Oakland, which happens to be only a block from the main post office. It turned out to be a rainy day. I literally just put a call out on Facebook, and we sent these T-shirts that you could see sort of right here in a clear envelope. So everyone who saw and touched these envelopes before they ended up probably in the trash in Trump's case, got the message. So that was just a really quick, easy, fun. And we had so much fun. We had so much energy and excitement. And I realized, wow, activism can be fun and we can laugh. And so that was really the beginning. And that was in 2016. Next. Next. Let's see where Haley is. Haley, are you with us? There we go. So then, of course, Trump was elected, and we all, and I say we all of us activist artists got in full gear pretty quickly. And this is from Inauguration Day in DC, and I've made these feminist riot shields. The paint that's used on them is actually nail polish. And I sort of got information with the Capitol Police and did my own sort of action next to them as they were protecting the Capitol during the inauguration. Next. So that was in 2017, and this is in Miami, also in 2017 in December. And this was the second time I decided, okay, I've got to do something, make a statement. And these parades then turned into something where I encourage artists to wear their art, and Krista Suh, who's the Pussy Hat founder, she came along and she provided some pink pussy hats. And you could see a bunch of signs and flags. And we had amazing drag queen who actually later, just this past season, was on RuPaul's show. So this was in Miami, 2017. It was called Parade Against Patriarchy. And I planned this in 2 weeks. It was a little insane, but I have ADHD, so I'm able to hyper focus. And this is how I often plan these events within a month or so. Sometimes I've spent a year. We didn't have a permit because it was too late, and we just did it. I invited artists from all over the country, and some of them came. So this is the sort of the first larger parade. Next. This one's in 2018. It was called We Vote. This was in New York City. So this sort of shows the energy and artwork that's included in these parades. Next. I've also even done an activation on a boat. It's called the Feminist Flotilla. And this was when the MAGA Proud Boys were going to do a protest at Crissy Field. And we weren't allowed to show up with signs and counter protesters. And I had a friend who funded this boat so we could be close to Crissy Fields, which is in San Francisco. And we had a pirate radio show going and a bunch of flags. So, you know, being public and being in the public eye on a large scale can take many different forms. Next. I've also put 3 different political banners in the sky. This was for an activation I did, a parade also in Miami. You can see Untitled tent is right there at the bottom, and it was called Civil Discourse. Next. Another in this time in this case, this was a event that I started right when the world shut down. I wanted to really focus on equal pay for women artists, and I came up with the Art of Equal Pay. And basically, the sort of the crux of it was for women to increase their pay, or sorry, the price of their artwork by 15% on Equal Pay Day, this is Women's Equality Day, which is a different day. But we did about 14 online events, and this initiative is still going. You can go to the Art of Equal Pay to see more. Lena, again, was involved. And it's a sort of a very nuanced issue. And I realize not all artists can increase the prices if they're not already selling their artwork. So I encourage female artists to at least increase their prices by 5% symbolically. And I think that's really important because we still have a far way to go. And I would hold these at first weekly, then they were bi-weekly events. And some of you might recognize some local artists in these photos. Next. And this is also a billboard campaign. This is on the West Side Highway in New York. I had them also in Houston. And again, this was on Equal Pay Day that these were going actually for 3 weeks, encouraging artists to raise their prices on Equal Pay Day. Next. This is the largest parade I've done to date. This was in Times Square in 2020 during the shutdown in September. I did it with the Wide Awakes. It was a really long parade. They organized part of it. I organized the part that was from Times Square to Washington Square Park. It was exhilarating. And again, it's about creating hope and sisterhood and community and connection and supporting each other. These events are really energetic and, like I said, fun. Next. And this is example, some of my sculptures. This is a vanity piece with a neon on it. And this is from a show called Freedom is for Everybody. Next. And this is a sampling of some of my purses. This is from a show in 2020 from at the Nancy Hoffman Gallery. And you can see sort of the breadth of the texts that are included. And believe me, I'm working on a lot of new ones right now, including We're Not Going Back. And obviously many more. If you can see me, I have a brat colored purse that says vote on it that's going to Chicago for a large scale political show that I'm in during the DNC. So I'll be in town for the DNC coming up in a week and a half. Next. And this was the precursor. Happened to be in this brat colored green, but the green also symbolizes abortion rights, which is why I've used it. This is from a Phaedon book that came out this year. That's included several of my purses. Next. It's also in the show in Alameda, in the collection there. So I've been working on abortion rights, reproductive rights since 2012, sort of again. I first made my abortion rights artwork in 1989. Can't believe I'm still doing this. These are inflatable abortion pills. I have 2 sets, and they're going to be traveling all over the country this fall. The first set is starting at this show during the DNC. So I'm really excited about that. And then one's going to Brandeis, and then the rest are going to be traveling around the country on a truck and stopping in many different cities. And again, you can see on my Instagram for more information where it will be stopping, and it will be in San Francisco. So I don't have the dates in my head, but it'll be on my Instagram. Next. Here's another one of my activations. This is on March 8th. I try to do something on International Women's Day every year. This obviously is at the UN, and I brought together a number of artists, and we did a bunch of flag waving with feminist flags. Something also I've been really involved in doing and getting other encouraging artists to do is these feminist flags that we come together and show at different events. Next. This is on the beach. Those are also abortion pills. You can see that this has really been my focus. Well, especially post Roe. Never thought I'd say that. And I've partnered with a lot of different organizations. In this case, Plan C Pills. And I've done a couple different events with them, one in the snow and one on the beach in Miami. And Nadia from Pussy Riots here as well. And I just put the word out, and people join. We created this whole drawing. It's 54 feet wide. So it's quite an endeavor, and it's all about, again, the community and the hope that it creates. And I also donate purses every year to different organizations like Planned Parenthood and Repo Rights for All as a way to pay forward what I'm able to support with my artwork. Okay, next. This is my most recent parade. This is in last year, and as you can see, DC. And here I've just been encouraging more and more artists to make these feminist flags. So a lot of them are carrying the flags. This was pretty exciting. It was a great event to do in DC, and like I said before, I've done 15 of these parades, and they're just really exciting to get involved with. I will be doing another one here in the city, San Francisco, but my next one will be in Chicago during the DNC with Airco, who I think who's on the far right here, who's I think watching right now, and a number of other artists. Next. And the most recent billboard show that I organized that Lena also was involved in was these billboards that I felt like really needed to be sort of focused on the attendance or people attending the RNC So I tried to hijack their language. American Land of the Free. This is a flag made with resin abortion pills. The original is much smaller, but Lena was involved in this, and we really sent strong messages to Milwaukee. We had 5 billboards altogether in this one. Next. And I think this is my last slide. This is the event that I'm co-organizing in Chicago. And it's taking place on August 19th. And we're really excited and jazzed about this. And again, there'll be many other events this fall, a lot of different shows and actions happening. So keep an eye on my Instagram and website. Trying to see if there was something else I wanted to focus on. Oh yes, and this leads right into Lena. And there's my mantra is really focusing on 4 things, where I tell everyone to do this, because everyone can get involved in activism in different ways, and most of them are simple. Voting, of course, super simple. Everyone needs to vote. Show up at marches. Donate, which to different events, which Lena will talk about, and volunteer. The poll workers, we need poll workers right now, and across the country, you can volunteer with that. So those are my mantra, and 4 ways you can get involved without spending money or spending too much time. But I'm going to hand it over to Lena, and thank you so much.
Thank you for that, Michele. I think one of the things also I wanted to say, Lena, as you're starting to sort of set up your presentation and your screen share, which is how we're going to be walking through on your end, I want to put a little bit of a bookmark. You mentioned the Wide Awakes, Michele, and the collaboration with Hank Willis Thomas. Also, if we have any amount of time to sort of talk about the history of the Wide Awakes, which goes all the way back to the 19th century, it might be interesting at the end. Lena, giving you some time, really, if you want to start to move into on your side and for your presentation. Also, just to say that Michele had mentioned that donating is another way to participate. Indeed, because it is part of Lena's practice, we will encourage her to feel comfortable to share some links about making donations and otherwise to the causes that are meaningful to her. While they may not represent the work of the ICA itself, we feel very comfortable encouraging Lena to represent them as it relates to her work. Lena, are you okay in terms of setting up to pull up the screen share and begin your presentation?
Yeah. Thank you. And thanks, Michele, so much for your presentation. Thanks to James for organizing this, and to, just thanks everyone for being here and for caring about what's happening in our world, and being curious about what we're up to. So I'm just going to jump into the slideshow because everything is there. All right. Can you all see my screen? Yeah. So I identify as really an artist and a craftswoman. And this really beautiful book by Glenn Adamson kind of lays out these historical connections between the history of craft practices and activism for social justice in America. And notice this freedom text on the bottom. This comes from a quilt by a Black quilter, Jessie Telfair, and I'd always looked at this piece. Quilts are a big part of my practice, and I've always looked at this piece and just loved it. And I think initially I thought that it was probably a quilt that was made during the Civil War era, but in fact, she made it in the 80s. And well, of course, it alludes to like the history of slavery and emancipation. Really, she made the quilt in response to an incident that happened. She worked in a cafeteria in Georgia in the 60s, and she took off time to vote, and she was fired. And the quilt was made as a response to that many years later. And it combines a lot of things that I incorporate in my own work: text, and of course this connection to quilt making. So this is just me working on a piece, and I show it. I make collages and drawings and sculptures rooted in quilt patterns. And at first, you know, the edges are really sharp. This image on the right can almost appear sort of digitally generated, but in fact, every triangle, the 210 triangles in this image are cut by hand. They're all slightly different, and if you get up close, there's an organic nature to each one of them. So I'm interested when I work with pattern and sort of the irregularity found within regularity in patterns. These are just two paper collages, all made with hand painted and hand cut papers. And although most of my work is rooted in textiles, I very rarely actually work with cloth or fabric, but I do make text-based pieces. You can see this one behind me. This All for One for All piece I made during the Trump administration. And I did a screen print version that ended up being a fundraiser for voting organizations. I'm just showing a couple of images from my studio practice. Like Michele, I have a active studio practice, so I make work in my studio, but I also make public-facing work that's entirely self-initiated. So we both really have that in common. This is a piece here on the right is a paper collage that I made over the course of a year during the pandemic. And it incorporates some images from this quilt made by Jane Sickle in Vermont during the Civil War with my own symbols that have meaning related to social justice, queer culture, sustainability. So I'm interested in the symbols that quilt motifs can carry and in symbols in general. And this was the finished collage. It's 143 unique motifs with hand cut paper set in relief. And since that time, I've worked on a variation of this, adapting the relief paper collages into concrete quilts. And this is for a large outdoor public art work I'm making in South San Francisco with 18 by 18 inch tiles. So this is, I'm just jumping to the fallout of the 2016 election and the Women's March in Oakland that I'm sure many of you were a part of. So on this day, millions of people marched around the world. And this is what my house looked like. Like once a month, I'd have these gatherings, and there were a ton of people who came. We came out every month, and we basically learned together how to respond. And what we could do, like the most effective things we could do to end the Trump administration, essentially. And, you know, what I came to, what was sort of obvious is they have to be, we have to vote them out. You know, that's the way really that we can change the situation. So we did a lot of postcarding. This was actually at a restaurant. We had to take over a restaurant because my house got too small for it. So I think 100 people were at this one gathering, and we wrote 500 postcards. So this is what downtown Berkeley looked like a lot during the Trump administration, pretty regularly, and it was super frightening. So this is like Proud Boys related to Proud Boys, people coming in and really starting these super violent riots. And as a, you know, I live 6 blocks from downtown Berkeley, and during a Passover one year like this, we heard just like the helicopters and the noise, and it was really frightening. And as an artist, you know, for me, like, I had friends actually who would come and kind of get involved in this stuff, but for me, like, I'm not going to get in a fist fight with a fascist. So my, you know, the way that I responded was thinking about how could I as an artist contribute to public dialogue around standing, you know, really standing united against what was happening and the bigotry wing. So the first public poster that I made was this Berkeley Stands United Against Hate poster. We didn't put a name on it. We didn't put a website on it. It was more of a public service announcement. It was funded by the city of Berkeley, and they just a press conference with our mayor and Congresswoman Barbara Lee and Nancy Skinner and others. Since the first poster, subsequently like 200,000 of the posters have been printed for 10 Bay Area cities. And then on the heels of this, so when the midterms came around, partly just because the posters had sort of spread so widely, which I hadn't anticipated, when the midterms came around, I really wanted to create a poster. And again, this dovetails with something Michele said about like, what do we stand for? What are we going to do now? So really thinking about being proactive. And I was strategically thinking about sending these to swing states. So again, like the language here is like invitational rather than confrontational, and it's really meant to reach a wide audience. So it's super simple language. Vote for democracy is the phrase that we came up with for this first poster. And then we did a Spanish version, your vote is your voice. And we did a public fundraiser for these and circulated 25,000 of them in 25 states. And they're all given away for free. So this is a piece I made in 2019. And again, you can see the use of, this is again, a mix of like historical quilt symbols with symbols for social justice. So the top row, maybe you can see my cursor, there's the equality symbol is next to the justice symbol with an arrow pointing to them. And I was sort of thinking about the organization, the Equal Justice Initiative, like a little, so there's sort of wordplay that happens, or there's a grammar or a meaning that comes from the juxtaposition of different symbols. And this piece played a big role in the posters that I made in 2020. So you can see here the Vote for Democracy poster made in 2020 in collaboration with Lexi Visco. Each poster has a different motif from this collaging, the personal and political, quilts being so personal and intimate, and the message being political. And we added more messages in 2020. So relevant issues, the reasons that we vote, policymakers, and the people that we vote into office have a great effect on these issues. So vote for racial justice in the wake of George Floyd, vote for the planet. And all of these are still, you know, relevant today. We did a version in Chinese and Tagalog. And the way it works is we fundraise and then they're distributed across the country. So we find volunteer distributors. We're strategic about where we send them, trying to focus on, you know, some of the bigger blue cities, but a lot of swing states. And then they wind up in libraries and, you know, bookstores, people's porches for pickup. And then all these images just sort of come in from across the country after they're circulated, which is nice. It's on, we don't really have to document the project because it documents itself. So this is a community voter registration effort in Brooklyn. This was posted on Instagram on the last day to register to vote in Arizona, Maricopa County, which, you know, was really critical to the outcome of the 2020 election. This is a worker empowerment organization in Texas. This is a public library in Miami. And when I look at this slide and when I share it these days, I wonder if in libraries in Florida, if they would even put up these messages, even though they're essentially, they don't talk about a candidate, they don't name a candidate or party. But I wonder if they would even, you know, if the libraries would even put them up. I'm going to go through these a little quickly, just more images of the posters in use. This was the Orlando Weekly published the paper in such a way that you could cut out the posters and put them in your window. And this was from the same paper. There was an article about a march that had happened in town. And then we also made postcard versions of the posters, which we still have available for free on our website, and used to postcard to voters across the country. And the Berkeley Art Museum has put these billboard-sized versions of the posters up on their outdoor screen the last 3 election cycles. And then we also have these free downloads. So we have these now, and they're black and white, 8.5 by 11. People can download them. Printmakers use them. They can be used to make screen prints, letterpress, really anything. We allow people to use them however they want, as long as nothing that they make is ever sold and that the wording isn't altered. Here's a kid in Brooklyn wheat pasting. This is an image of some young people in Chicago. And I started fundraising in 2018. And just the biggest question that I had to ask myself is who if I'm going to fundraise, if I'm going to raise more than a few $1,000s, who am I going to fundraise for? And so I started to do research about voting organizations in swing states, the swing states that will impact the election. And this is sort of what landed me to Flip the Vote. So I have to pass it to John in 1 minute. I'm just going to go through a couple more slides and then I'll pass it to John. Miriam and I were honored with a day in our name by the mayor in Berkeley in 2019, which was nice because, you know, all this work that I do, the activism work, the work around the elections, I do it entirely for free and it's all volunteer. Unlike Michelle, I don't get a lot of press because I'm really just bad at it. I don't end up reaching out to anybody because I feel like I don't have time to do that. These are the 2022 posters with my new collaborator, Hope Meng, who is absolutely wonderful designer and artist in her own right. We made the Vote for Reproductive Freedom poster about, I don't know, 4 months before the decision came down because we knew it was coming. In 2022, we made the Vote for Trans Rights poster. Hope wanted to add gun reform, which I'm really glad we did. And I'm also sorry that it's so relevant. And then again, the posters just kind of circulate. We were included in the Hella Feminist exhibition. They gave posters away for free and we did a screen printing workshop. And then, so I have to just say thank you to Michelle because she organized the billboard project that I ended up being a part of in 2018. And now I have to stop, but this is where the billboards ended up in these swing states. And this is an image from Flip the Vote showing the big battleground states. So you'll notice these places are the same. And I want to just quickly say also that it is possible to be involved in the movement for peace in the Middle East and also involved in this election for the best outcome. So I've been fundraising now for since October for Flip the Vote. And I'm just gonna jump to, this is me and John in LA at a party. These are the 8 states that we have to win. And these are the states where Flip the Vote has voting organizations set in place. And, you know, actually, John, do you want to at all just like chime in? I feel like I should pass it to you now.
And let me also just say, by way of just brief introduction to John, again, just in terms of representing this from the ICA, it's our great pleasure to be able to provide this platform for the artists to be able to share their opinions and their political positions as it relates to their work. It's also our great honor to have Santa Clara University professor John Ifcher here, not only to be able to speak about that joint work with Flip the Vote, but also in terms of how he is also managing that in terms of communicating with students on campus, and he himself also needing to sort of maintain the balance of having a particular position that he may be holding on the personal side and making sure that it continues to align with the life that he leads as an economics professor at Santa Clara University. John, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. And actually, Lena, you can turn off the slides.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I feel like we should let people know about the partner groups at some point.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe I'll ask you to put that.
Yeah. Okay. I can pop them back up. Yeah. Okay.
Well, first, James, thanks for inviting us all here. And it's such an honor to be talking with Michelle and Lena. And Lena and I have worked a lot together. Lena was too modest to say that her work raising money this cycle has raised almost $200,000, which is amazing. And part of Flip the Vote's goal of raising $10 million this cycle. And James, you know, asked me to speak. We have a sort of very standard house party presentation that we do, and I'm not going to do that today. But if you would like to see that, actually, you can go to our website, and Haley can put the link in the chat to visit our website. And then there's an events page, and on that events page, you can sign up yourself to go and see the whole shebang. But today I'm just going to talk for maybe a little bit, like 5 minutes, about how I started Flip the Vote, why I started the Flip the Vote, and how it relates to my training as an economist. So I'm sure, like many of you, in 2016, on a very sad November night, I had gathered with 30 friends in my house, and we had actually cake And I don't know if you know, you can print with icing on a cake that had a picture of Hillary Clinton on the top of the cake. And we had tons of pink bubbly wine ready to uncork to celebrate our first woman president. And as you all know how that ended, I won't belabor the point other than say I was despondent, and my guests made me leave the house because I was such a bummer. And when I got back, the house was clean. So that just gives you a sense of how I was feeling. And as an economist, I thought to myself, you know, I could do all the, I've been politically active, I could do all the normal things, but, you know, one of the things that economists focus on is marginal analysis. You know, if you spend 1 extra hour, what is the largest impact you can have in every single hour I spend? And from that came a kernel of an idea, which was to see whether I, just sort of a normal, you know, professional in the Bay Area, could get 25 people in my network to each donate $2,000 to help flip the house. That was the original name of our group, as James mentioned. And, you know, why 2,000? Most of the people I was talking to were like-minded, but had never, you know, given more than 10, 20, $100. You might be sitting there listening to the webinar thinking, wow, $2,000 is a lot of money. And so, you know, we would try to anchor it. So we're using my economic thinking here. You know, could you afford an extra mortgage payment given the urgency of the situation? So that was part of the initial idea. So I just made a list and I started talking to all of my friends. I ordered it from warmest or easiest conversation to hardest conversation. And I started having these conversations. And from that, Flip the Vote emerged. 3 things became apparent pretty quickly, and they've remained central to what we're doing. So one of those things is what we call relational fundraising. So we use our connections to then connect to your connections, then to connect to their connections, and so on. And so we're always making new connections and building our community through this relational fundraising model. So when I started talking to people, they said to me, this is a great idea. Can you help me do it too? And so it just snowballed. And we ended up, as James mentioned, in that first cycle, raising over $700,000 with an initial goal of just 50. And since then, we've raised another 10 million. So that's relational fundraising, and that has stayed the same. The second thing that happened is people were like, okay, you've convinced me, but I've usually give $10, $20. I mean, now I'm making an investment, like $2,000. What should I do with it? I want to make sure it's going to be impactful. And from that came 2 other kernels of the ideas behind Flip the Votes, which is thinking about donations as an investment and developing evidence-based recommendations. So those are the 3 kernel ideas that have continued with us: relational fundraising, evidence-based recommendations, and donating as an investment. Let me just talk quickly about those last 2. In terms of evidence-based recommendations, as Lena was saying, the idea is we want the biggest return on our investment. And so to do that, we have to think about how to invest this money. And for us, that has 3 links. So we call this the chain of evidence. And link number 1, which Lena referred to, is, well, we need to know where the vote is going to be most impactful. I mean, if I can create an extra vote, well, if I create an extra vote in Alameda County, it's not going to impact the things that we care about, which is the presidency or the Senate or the House. So many of you probably live in the Bay Area and feel like you can't influence national politics, but you can. So the first thing is, where do I want the extra votes? And then the second question is, well, how do I get those votes out? And that leads to the second link in the chain of evidence, which is that we are targeting what we call the new American majority, which is an overlapping group of unmarried women, people of color, and youth. Again, unmarried women, people of color, and youth. There's a lot of overlap if you think, you know, Kamala really likes Venn diagrams, if you've seen that video, and there's a lot of overlap between those three groups. And so this new American majority represents 2/3 of the electorate, but new American majority voters are less likely to vote than other voters, and they vote Democrat by large margins. So if we could just get those voters or a portion of those voters out to the poll, we would crush the election. So our groups do what's called relational organizing, which is not what candidates do where they knock on your door with a bunch of talking points and ask for your vote. This is an ongoing year-round process where you go and you talk to people 5-10 times a year. People don't fly in from out of state. It's community members who do the relational organizing, either staff or volunteers, and academic evidence, again, sort of going to the econ part of it, academic evidence shows this is a very effective way to turn out particularly sporadic or low frequency new American majority voters. So chain link 1, where do you want it? Chain link 2, how do you get them out? Relational organizing. And then chain link 3, which brings me to the groups that Lena had up. We then vet specific groups to make sure that they're effective relational organizers. So you could put the slide up now, Lena, if you want. And on the screen, you'll see the 8 groups that we are helping support in the 8 states in which we're working, where the votes really matter. So again, point number 1 is we do relational fundraising. Point number 2 is we do evidence-based recommendation. The chain of evidence is, where do I need the votes? How do you get them out? Relational organizing. We've vetted for you these organizations that are effective relational organizers. And then I want to just end by talking about the third key or core strategy is donating as an investment. And I already talked a little bit about using the anchor, of a mortgage as setting people's ideas of what they should be donating high. But when we say donating as investment, what we mean is that, first of all, as the donor, we want you to think about a meaningful amount. So I'm sure you all get emails every day saying, can you give $20.24 or else the sky is going to fall, right? Small dollar asks that are endless. So we don't do that. We don't blast people with lots of small dollar asks. We're asking people to set a meaningful amount, and meaningful is going to depend on each person's financial capacity. So for some people, that literally is a 5 or 6 figure gift, and for other people, that could be a reoccurring donation, the value of a dinner. So that's point 1. But the point 2 about investing is that investments have short-term benefits. The short-term benefit is we're getting voters out to win the elections we need to win. And then the long-term investment is we're actually building power in these communities. So these groups hold elected leaders accountable. They meet with them, share community concerns. They're building bench strength. They're educating leaders in the community. And sometimes these individuals who work in these organizations actually get elected to office. The current Nevada Secretary of State is a founding member of our Nevada partner. So I'll end there to say, Flip the Vote grew out of this idea. It grew. We're trying to have 300 house parties. Go to our website, come to our open house party. What we have done all along is relational fundraising, evidence-based recommendations, and donating as an investment. And we are going towards $10 million to our partner groups this cycle, and we're already well above $6 million. So thank you. I hope that wasn't too quick.
Can I just quickly, I just want to show one image that people could screen share, which is, I know we're just about at 7 o'clock, but I did insert, for anyone who's interested in going to more events, if anyone wants to just screenshot this, I'm hosting 6 events in the next 2 weeks. So you can also just get in touch with me through email to find out if you're in the Bay Area. And I'm doing a virtual event on the 24th, August 24th.
So thank you all so much for all of that. I want to be mindful that indeed, that we don't end up leaving the impression that that this is, simply a call in support of Flip the Vote in terms of the program itself, but indeed really to make sure that it's understood that as a platform, it's about providing this opportunity for each of these remarkable people in our area to speak about some of the work that matters to them. I hadn't mentioned this to you before, John, but I might like just to ask one more question, and maybe somewhat in closing. I would also want to drive home that for me, one of the big takeaways, Michele, you gave the idea of sort of 4 ways in which to be involved: voting, marches, donate, and volunteers. But also one of the things that really, really stuck with me is, Lena, the way that you framed the work that you did about being invitational rather than confrontational, which I think whether our work here is political or not, I just think that that's also a really important concept, at least in terms of how we conceive of the art that we're presenting at the ICA, whether political or about almost anything. The idea that what we're doing is we're inviting people in, and we want to make sure that we are free, open, and welcome to all, whatever your background might be, right? And John, if you can, I'd be kind of curious, living your life also on campus, would you be willing to talk a little bit about sort of the future? What do you think you feel like you're hearing from the kids, and maybe even some from backgrounds who might be in support of Trump, worried about security, worried about the economy, worried about issues that they feel might be foremost in their mind, or whatever else might come to your mind? I would imagine that everybody on the call, whether younger, older, or otherwise, is concerned about how do we, sort of animate the electorate going forward. And I'm wondering if you might be able to share some thoughts about what you think are concerning kids on college campuses these days.
Well, I mean, one is that, the switch at the top of the Democratic ticket has just unleashed an incredible amount of energy among young people. I'm getting reports of that all different ways. So, the youth are really energized by the change at the top of the ticket. And, I think, I'm sure everyone here has heard the phrase "Okay, Boomer," and there was a ton of resignation about both tickets, and people who just were so dispirited by the choice they faced. And the switch has really energized and unleashed an amazing amount of energy, is what I'd say. But we at Flip the Vote, we have this saying, which is hope is a discipline. And that's Miriam Kaba, who's an activist, said hope is a discipline. And, she explained what she meant as follows. She said, hope isn't just some fuzzy feeling. Hope is about getting up every day and struggling and putting one foot in front of the other, even when it's so hard, continuing to struggle and fight, because that's what's going to change the world. And so in my Flip the Vote work, we take that idea of hope as a discipline very seriously. And even in the really hard days, in the early parts of this year through the early parts of the summer, when, everyone was dispirited, we would say hope is a discipline, and we just continue to do our work. We continue to focus on what we can do and not get distracted by all the noise. And I think in Michele and Lena, you see that as well. Like, they're just doing stuff. And that's what we all need to do. That's the call to action, is to do things and not get dispirited, focus on what you can do and not on what you can't do. So that's what I would say. Thank you.
Thanks for that, John. At least from my perspective, and I'm trying to look at the screens, Michele, Lena, to see if you're trying to lean in or want to say something else, but it feels like really great closing thoughts for all of us. And indeed, in many ways, I think, we, since the advent of the concept of, existentialism from Kierkegaard to Sartre or otherwise, that sense of kind of existential dread, I think, fills a lot of what we're doing now at the, end of the first quarter of the 21st century. We're all, no matter our backgrounds, confronting a lot of just truly existential issues, the desire to truly, get up the next day in the morning and do what comes next. And to understand, indeed, John, as you just said so beautifully, that hope is a discipline. It's what religion teaches us in many ways. Again, I'm looking at nodding heads. I'm seeing a lot of appreciation come in from the chat of a lot of people feeling like they have learned from this panel. And with that, I think what we might do is wrap it up and say thank you, everybody. There's more gratitude coming in. The program has been recorded. We will share back links and the recording itself over the next couple of days. We can't thank you all enough for participating. Join us on September 14th for the opening of the next set of exhibitions. Allegedly, the worst is behind us. The Future Democracies Laboratory and the new facade project being done by Oscar Lopez down here at the ICA San Jose. Thank you all for what you do. I do want to acknowledge our board chair, John Thomas, who I think has stayed on the call throughout. Thank you for that, John. Old friends, new friends, thank you for being here. Take care of each other. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, everybody, for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks.